While surrogacy has skyrocketed across the globe as a $14 billion industry, a fairly new practice of uterus transplantation is slowly becoming more common. The first successful uterus transplant was performed in 2012. The first child born of a uterus transplant occurred in Sweden in 2014. Since then, dozens of babies have been born through uterus transplants. Dr. Andrew Kubik, Research Fellow of Bioethics and Medical Conscience at the Religious Freedom Institute and Personal Consultations Ethicist at the National Catholics Bioethics Center, has written a book on the moral implications of these transplants. Transplanting the Womb, a Catholic bioethical analysis, dives into the ethical ramifications of this kind of science. It's on sale now at bookstores. Andrew, can you walk us through your research and what you learned about this emergent technology?
Absolutely. So this was a topic that I was very unfamiliar with when it was first presented to me by a friend, mentor, and at the time my dissertation director, Father Nicanor Austriaco. Over the course of several years, I dove pretty deep into the research, both the medical and scientific literature, as well as the ethical literature. And what I found was a procedure that is performed by physician scientists who no doubt have incredible ingenuity, technical expertise, and skills, but nevertheless, a procedure that required a very forceful, very strong ethical analysis, as with any emergent technology. And so, as the old adage says, simply because we can do, should we do? And that is what I did over the course of several years doing the research for my dissertation, and then the research necessary to update that dissertation to the book. With regard to what I also had the opportunity to do, which was really a blessing, studying uterine transplants and the individuals who would seek it out, I had the opportunity to pray daily for the men and women who heroically carry the cross of infertility. And not only to pray for them and their carrying of that cross, but also pray for physician scientists and for others who work in the field to respond to that infertility, hopefully in ways that are moral, for example, restorative reproductive health care, ways that will actually resolve infertility rather than work around it.
And where in the U.S. would you say this procedure is done most often, and who would you say are the recipients and donors?
So as you mentioned in the intro, Sweden is known to have performed the first successful, meaning that it concluded with a live birth transplant. Actually, there were 9 uteri transplanted, 7 were considered successful, and I just read that all in all, 6 children have been born from those 7 uteri. But it's actually here in the United States that we find the world leader, and that would be Baylor University Medical Center. Baylor University Medical Center is the first to move from clinical trials to an actual program at their campus in Texas. They were the first to deliver a baby in the U.S. From a transplanted womb. They were the first to deliver babies from both living and deceased uteri. And they were the first to deliver 2 babies from the same transplanted womb. And recent reports suggest that they have completed over 33 transplants and have delivered over 22 babies. Regarding what are the criteria to be a donor and a recipient, we'll start with the recipient. They would have uterine factor infertility that can either be congenital, which means they were born without a uterus, or they have a malformed uterus, or they have acquired uterine factor infertility, which means they had a hysterectomy performed. They have to be cancer-free for 5 years, of childbearing age, and generally healthy. To be a donor, they're more specific with the age. Usually it's a woman between the ages of 30 and 50. They have to also be cancer-free for 5 years, and they have to be generally healthy.
Now, from a Catholic ethical perspective, are uterus transplants permissible? Why or why not?
Considering the entirety of the uterus transplantation process, the first part of it, a required part, is in vitro fertilization. Every potential candidate for a uterine transplant must undergo IVF and have several embryos frozen. IVF, the Catholic Church has taught that IVF is an immoral act. Additionally, there are moral concerns. While not required for the uterine transplant process, it could occur, and that is if a living donor were to donate her uterus before she completed menopause, that would be a sterilizing act. There's also the concern that there could be twinning or multiple embryos implant, and in that case, a selective reduction could be ordered, which would be a direct abortion on at least one, possibly more human embryos. There are prudential concerns regarding the donor, the recipient, and the children that could be born from these transplanted wombs. All in all, this is a process that ought not to be done as it exists now, especially in light of the readily available, safe, and effective alternative of adoption.
Thank you, Andrew, for your research and for being with us today. Dr. Kubik's book called Transplanting the Womb, a Catholic Bioethical Analysis is available right now from multiple vendors, including the Catholic University of America Press, from Amazon and Barnes & Noble.